Well, well, Greg, thank you so much for helping with my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Sure, and glad to be here. Well, first of all, Greg Andrews, based in Houston. I'm an IT manager, worked on payment systems for a large computer company here in the Houston area. I'll let you go figure out who that is. But no, just been a IT guy about half my life and just a random kid from Texas for the other part. But I'm glad to be here on your little chat and looking forward to seeing stuff go back to space. I'll continue to just be amazed by everything that Elon's doing, even though there's, not a lot of people that are pro Elon here in the state. But anyway, I'm blown away by the simple fact that you can, you know, take a long cylinder and plant it on its rear and land it back, and it's mind-boggling with what they've been able to do, going from shooting the Saturn V's up into space and then landing with the shuttle and now landing a grain silo. So
Um, so, I'm kind of curious. Well, what got you into IT?
um needing to get a real job. I mean, literally, the I had just gotten married. We got back into town. The company that I was working for, we had closed the doors basically while I was out on my honeymoon, and had to get a job, and then found a job to fill the gap, and then it was time to get a real job. So I went to work for Dell in Austin. They were really, really small at the time. Um, well, I mean, I say really small, a whole lot smaller than it is now. But went to work there. And while I started out on the sales floor, there was a niche in the computer industry back then, even. Um, you were either selling computers because people didn't have them yet, or you were servicing or building computers. And sales, that's where I started, but it wasn't really my forte. I really didn't want to be in support. But back in that point in time, the computer industry was very problematic, if you will, because that day and time, we're talking 286, 386, early Gen 486. There were jumps in the chip industry just beginning to start. But at that point in time, you could have a uh, piece of software that if you hooked up this printer, all of a sudden your computer nothing would communicate. And it was, I mean, you probably remember the old driver battles. There was stuff that, if you, and I'm going to age myself by throwing the name out of an application, but there was, Epson, or, all these companies that were just beginning to create, computers and peripherals and get them out there. But if you hooked up a printer to this parallel port, all of a sudden Lotus 123, didn't work anymore. And so compatibility was really kind of the name of the game back then. And so as Dell sales began to push and sell more, um, you had to keep up with the latest of, peripherals. What are they coming? What are they consuming? How are they doing it? How's it using the computer? What does it work with? What does it not? And so there was a little group of us at Dell that all we did is maintain and follow and test a lot of compatibility of products with peripherals and stuff like that, so that as the sales team were selling products off into the customers, we were able to tell them, with certainty that this and this and this all work together, and you're either going to have a good package to sell to the customer. So it was, basically tracking and training the sales teams, what they could sell, what they couldn't, what worked, what didn't. I mean, I remember even the modem wars. Hayes was coming in. Hey, here, check this latest box, and then off on the left came U.S. Robotics and Practical Peripherals and all the old names that don't exist anymore. The number of people out there that don't know, and I it's not Jimmy Fallon. What's the other late time guy that does the Tonight Show? He goes out just like Johnny Carson used to do, but he goes out on the street and has contests on the street with the people, and he's like, "Okay, tell me what this sound is." And to us that have heard it before, it's the sound of an old, 1200, 2400 BPS modem trying to connect, and everybody's like, name that sound, and they're like, they have no clue what the sound is. And back then, that was our communication. There was no, you know, there was no Wi-Fi. There were no little dongles that connect. I mean, this one right here, for example, is one that hooks up to my computer to get the ant sensor data off my bicycle.
Hmm.
Well, the Wi-Fi didn't exist then. That kind of technology didn't exist then. The fact of this thing having, holding 64 gigs of memory, that was, you were doing good if you had 16 meg of memory, back in the early computer days. That was just nuts, in the
And
in the 386, 486 realm. So that's where I got started in the computer space. And then from there got out of sales, and they pulled a group together and says, hey, come work over here. Let's start Dell.com. And it was, there's a small handful of people, John Hatcher, Kerry Harrison, Fred Armour, Kenny Hill, James Roberson. There was a dozen of us, and there was there came up Dell.com, and it was built and started, and then it just boomed beyond that. And like you said, starting in the early days, the .com boom days. Um, and then eventually got hired from there here to come to Houston and start the store stuff for Compaq, and then that got taken over by HP. And so 20 plus years, well, I was there for 5, here for almost 25. So 30 years down the road, here we are and still going strong. But
I,
yeah, that's kind of how I forged into the IT space.
yeah, I think I came along just maybe about 5 years after you, because when I graduated from high school and started college in '94, the internet was really taking off in the consumer space. I think that's the year of the Netscape browser,
Mm-hmm.
and basically anybody with any type of computer experience could get a job.
Yeah.
And within a few months, they had experience, they get a better job. And within a few months,
Mm-hmm.
they had more experience, they get even better job. It's just like just a crazy time. It's hard to imagine.
Yeah, people, the people were definitely leapfrogging and job hopping. I had a resume cross my desk, um, I don't know, about a year ago, and literally since the kid got out of college, every 6 months there was another job hop and another job hop. And while during the dot-com boom days, and people job hopping for options or taking on this adventure or that adventure, were you here during during PC order during those days, and with that startup company in Austin? I don't even, that they eventually folded, but there were people hopping left and right, and .com startups and perks and stock options, and all the you know grandeur, visions of grandeur for everybody. That it was absolutely crazy with the .com booms, with startup booms, with job hopping, like you said, going from here to here to here to here. um, the the stability of the market was anything but. Everybody's like, but everything's growing, and it wasn't really, I don't think, growing. It was blossoming with new ideas, and then that would get sucked up by an acquisition. So but yeah, it was a crazy point in time, and I think there's going to be more markets and niche markets like that where we're going to see explosions. The one that we've seen, the craze that we've seen as of late is crypto stuff. Um, I mean, I even had a couple of butterfly miners online for a while, and they did their jobs until it started slowing down, getting so far out into the chain that it just chewed and chewed and chewed to not do much. And so I finally powered those things off and never looked back. But I think the process of how crypto is done, the how the blockchain is done and certified, how the just how the whole process that will there's going to be leaps and bounds in terms of that kind of space, from how those technologies are utilized. There's I don't think they've even begun to scratch the surface of how like blockchain, for example, is done and utilized, much less how the whole chain is validated, whether it's used in crypto, whether it's used in transaction validation, big data. You know, it depends on whatever the footprints are going to be. But I think there's huge leaps and bounds to be made there. I think there's huge leaps and bounds to be made in crypto. But you know, I think the space vector of it is just going to be mind-boggling. I think we've only just begun to see what, you know, crazy ideas that some engineer in a room that we have never heard of yet has said, heck yeah, that can fly. I mean, you know, who's the dude that was sitting in a room and said, yeah, SpaceX can belly flop a grain silo and then stand it right back up and land it on its rear. It's seeing that actually happen with SN15, not 15, was it 15 or
Yeah,
16?
it was
16.
15.
But
15.
I lost track of them because they were going through numbers so fast. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it went from
seeing that
11 to 15, but yeah, it was 15.
actually happen, it was cool. It was probably one of the coolest things I think I've seen, and I'd love to have been down there to see it. And but the parts people don't realize is Texas is so stinking big. I mean, we're in Houston, which is on the south side of the state, and that's so far south. It's still another 6 to 8 hours away from us. So it's just, you know, it's like crossing the galaxy almost for just to get across Texas to get down there to see it. But I will get there one day. Do they still have the Falcon at Space Center Houston?
They do. Yep.
Okay.
It's one of the kind of the newer attractions. It's yeah, you can still walk underneath it, walk around it, and see the scorch marks like you're talking about.
I
I can't
want to
wait
get
until
out there
they.
and see it because there's a photographer that I follow that took uh, you know, you're going up to something that's, you know, super huge, and he went in there intentionally with a long telephoto lens just to shoot the side, you know, the side of the rocket in detail. And like you said, seeing the scorch marks and the pock marks down into the paint from the burning plasma as it's coming back down is just the texture that it built into the paint is just mind-boggling, just from the images that he posted. That, yeah, I want to get down there and see it in person. And but I really want to go see, there's two things I want to see. I want to see one of the grain silos go, and I want to see them land the Falcon 9s, you know, one of the early launches where they landed both Falcon 9s back on the ground. uh, I, I would love to see that physically in person, but you're either going to get to see the launch or you're going to get to see the landing. You really don't get close enough to see both, but you know, I'd like to eventually get there and do that. You know, doing the shuttle thing was on my bucket list, but obviously that's not going to happen now.
I know, I missed out on that too. Yeah. But did you consider any other careers besides IT?
No, not really. One of the things that I've always done, and it's more my personality than anything, I guess, is I've always kind of been a person that sits and watches. I'm more of an observationist than anything, but I sit and watch and look and observe, watch processes, watch people, watch systems, and one of the key pieces that I've always like kind of thought of is what adds value, or what is unique intrinsic value. So, and I'll back that up a little bit. If you've got developers, if you're an IT developer, which I started out as an IT developer, IT developers now versus IT developers when you and I started coding, you know, .NET was new and cool. It wasn't VB script anymore. It wasn't, you know, the basics of it was no longer just basic. And you know, then there was Visual Basic, and you know, and then there were, you know, VB.NET, and so there was all the little scripting stuff. The stuff that the developers are doing now is mind-boggling, whether it's on the Java space or the .NET side. But at the end of the day, if you've got a developer, granted they're going to have their coding based preferences, but if you've got a developers in reality are a dime a dozen. Everybody's got their own personalities and stuff like that. But if, as a manager of a team, if I need to go get something knocked out, all I've got to do is scan resumes, find out what skill sets they've got, and then I can go pull them in, and I can literally say, I can go back and I can say, hey, here's my requirements, go make this happen. And they can do it. But one of the things I look at it is what's missing from the puzzle. And it's like, if you see a hole or if you see a niche or a void, figure out how to fill that void, make yourself valuable, become the bridge. And if you're adding value, and that's one of the things, if you're adding value or you're completing a process, especially in the space where nobody understands it. I deal with payments. I still deal with payments. I've been dealing with payments now for going on 30, well, not 30 years, but about 26, 27 years. Very few people understand the payment space. They know that, and they know that you have to authorize and capture the money and get it. But to them, building an e-commerce site or a company, we're going to go sell X, Y, and Z. We're going to go introduce these products and sell them. To them, payments just happen. It's what I refer to as automagic. Payments automatically happens. It's you assume that when you go buy something that the tax system exists. Well, somebody had to code the tax system. Somebody has to manage the tax system. In our case, dealing with the payment system, nobody knew how to do that. Nobody at the time was dealing with, okay, we've got this website, and this happened during the dot-com boom days. It was like, we've got this website. We've got a sales catalog. We've got our products. We've got custom price lists for people. How do we take orders? And then, literally at that point in time, it was gather everybody in a conference room and let's figure out how do we go take orders online. And that's literally kind of the thought process that went into it. Okay, well, if we're going to take an order, how are we going to get paid for it? Well, okay, we'll go figure that out. And so, at that point in time, it was, can you go hook up to banks? Hey, Mr. Bank, we need access to your API stack so that we can process, payments in an automated fashion. You want to do what? Well, we want to process payments in an automated fashion. And they'd say, well, Mr. Customer, we've got this box. And what they were showing us was the box was, the card swiper that you've got, like when you go into Target or Walmart or whatever, there's the little card swiper, 10-key keypad swiper on the side. This is how we take payments. Okay. Does this talk to your backend system? Yes. Okay. We need this API that talks to that backend system. Well, why? We can just sell you a box. No, we don't want a box. We got to hook up our website to that box, to your system. Why do you want to do that? The banks literally were not even to the point of grasping it. So at that point in time, it became a challenge, and it's continued to be a challenge. Payments, okay, credit cards, it's a walk in the park. Well, now trying to do it in a fashion that is compliant with all the standards that are required, either security standards, privacy standards, government regulation standards, all the new stuff in Europe, all the new stuff in California, consumer privacy, having to fold all that in and then deal with all the regulatory changes that come along, and the card brand and payment method changes that come along every 6 months, and the rules change underneath it. It's been a space that's just continued to be challenging and ever ongoing. It's definitely not something that gets old, but I never really wanted to venture outside of the IT space, just because it was, building a future, not only for myself, but for my team, but also building and bridging a value that nobody else understood. So, my brain is always operated on, it's not how you can operate and interact with people, it's how can you interact with teams, not to just complete a capability, but basically offer a cohesive solution or make a broader end-to-end solution. I was talking to someone the other day, and they said, okay, so how does your team operate? And I'm like, for what? And they said, well, we need to figure out how to work with you guys best so that we can get our projects off the ground in a more efficient manner. And I said, so you're not really asking me how my team operates. What you really want to know is what's the best way to work with my team. He's like, yeah. I said, okay. Instead of saying, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? And I say, yes, no, no, yes. I said, that just tells you yes and no's. And you're sitting there hitting a tick box, and you think, okay, I've got a gap over here. And he goes, yeah. I said, okay, so now you know you've either got a capability and a gap, or you can come to me and say, here's my vision. Help me get from here to here. And I said, if I know your vision, I can say, okay, this is how we can fill the vision. This is how we can get you off the ground. When we get you off the ground, here's the bridge. We can get you from point A to point B. In the midst, we can start building all these little circles underneath. And so basically we can help get you off the ground, fulfill your vision, and then help build and, firm up the bridge or add to the capability stack. But at the end of the day, I'm helping you accomplish your vision. Now you've got an end-to-end vision that you see as highly successful, as opposed to, okay, I've got a project, we've got these gaps. I said, y'all haven't even gone from, we've got a doable vision. You went from, okay, here's where we want to go. Now we got these gaps. But now that they see a vision, they're excited, the team's excited. We also can help them, get from point A to point B, but help them, go beyond where they thought, because they were looking at, a team's looking at, well, we want to go into these 5 countries, and they're picking off like a really hard country that, doing e-commerce in a given country is, in several countries around the world, is a real hard challenge. And they're like, oh, we want to go get that one. Okay, why do you want to go do that country? There's this. And I said, no, I'm not saying don't go do that country. We definitely need to get there. Let's go work on that while it's a challenge. But in the midst of that, here are 17 other countries in this particular region that we already service, we already accept. We can make you and your team more successful while we're figuring out the one new problem point that nobody's gone and blazed the trails into yet. Oh, we can do that? Yeah. So it's always been fun to bridge the gap and help teams realize their vision. And I was on the business side of it. I was on the sales side of it, and it just never really was my thing. So doing the IT space, it has been basically kind of like where I found home. I'm a manager, have been a manager for years now. I I love working with my teams. The teams literally become like a small family. You were part of that crew, Everett. You were part of that crew. Jeff and Eddie both recently retired. And watching them leave was like watching a family member walk off down the road. But the growing with the teams and working with them has been just a pleasure in itself. And my team right now, I wouldn't want to do what I do with anybody else but my team. Can we add to the family? Yeah. Would I want to lose anybody from the family? Absolutely not. So it's been great.
That's amazing. It's I mean, we take it for granted just to be able to go to an online store, put in a credit card number, have everything work out. And I mean, whenever you're dealing with over 100 countries
Yeah.
potentially, and even way more than that in terms of jurisdictions, like you were talking about taxes. I mean, you got like the state, the city, the county, any combination of those have their own special rules.
Oh yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
the unfortunate part is when teams approach you to say, hey, let's go do X. Have you done your homework there yet? That's really one of the first. Sometimes, I mean, you really want to make sure that they've. Did your meeting just
Oops.
drop, or did your video
No,
stop?
I'm still here.
Okay.
Apparently,
Oh,
when
there
I
it
get a
goes.
call, the The
Oh,
video the call takes over and the
okay.
video goes away.
So yeah, when there's people that show up there, hey, we want to go do this. Okay, a couple of key questions. Is that part of your vision? Did you just throw a dart at a dartboard? You know, I love poking on their thought process sometimes, because sometimes it's like, we want to go do this. Okay, I'll help you, but there's not a whole lot of ROI behind it. So working with various teams, it always provides a fun challenge. And you know, my team, we're always up for a fun challenge, but sometimes we really question what the challenges, you know, are going to be. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Going into different places around the world, some of them are a walk in the park, some of them are really challenging. There's countries that you have to have, unless you've gone and done your homework, you'd never know that going into a country, and I'm not even going to say the country name, but you go into the country, and to do business in that country, you've got to have a commerce license per province in that country. To get
Wow.
the commerce license in those provinces, you've got to have local physical presence. Well, if you go
Wow.
start adding up what you've got to have to fulfill one thing for one province, and then you got to have this whole stack of provinces to go into this one place. You know, when you start doing the math behind the requirements to do business as a foreign entity in that company or in that country, it starts adding up real quick. So then you're like, okay, Mr. Business Person, did you have you done your research? Do you even know this exists? And they're like, oh. And so, you know, at least being able to know it, prep them for it, help them work through the kinks and the hurdles. It's been, you know, very rewarding, but it's also been highly, you know, educational across the board, because it's always a challenge. Like I said, business, and you know, lots of people think payments just happen automatically, and they don't they don't think twice about it. Yeah, there are companies that could do it for us, but at the end of the day, when you start looking at what the companies could do it for us charge versus what doing it ourselves saves us in the end, it's huge. The biggest challenge out there by far are the bad guys, the bad actors. You know, because we just recently saw, you know, in the computer sector, you know, we just saw, um, oh gosh, what was the pipeline that was taken offline a couple of weeks ago by
Oh
ransomware stuff?
yeah. I
Um,
know to like Millennium Pipeline or Centennial. Like what
it
was it?
started with a C, I think. Anyway,
C.
so that pipeline was taken offline by
Hmm.
the malware guys, that were, you know, then there is crypto ransomware, and so they're looking for their payment, which the insurance company did pay off. But the bad guys out there, the bad actors, are much better funded and are much more creative than the security space, the merchants, the companies, you know, than our cybersecurity teams, than the companies themselves in preparation for it. The bad actors, unfortunately, is going to be a big space for all of us to watch and deal with for years to come, because they're much more innovative in terms of how to go, you know, how to go break down the walls, or how to go punch a little bitty tiny hole. Um, you know, if they can punch a little tiny hole, it's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever gone and watched, because if you got any friends that are in the sciences, you know, zoology field or animals, um, you can find videos of where they've like made little bitty super tiny holes that are smaller than the size of a nickel, and a mouse just goes bloop, right through the hole. And you know, the bad actors are very much the same way. Once they get a foothold in, it's hard to, you know, find and detect them, get them out. Even if they're just in there poking around, and then once they poke around, then they figure out, they're trying to find what can they go back after later. But the bad actors is as bad as I hate to say it, uh, an incredibly well funded, innovative field that is highly, it's, well, I won't say it's highly unknown, because obviously they know themselves. They've got the whole, dark net and everything else that they do, but there's really, really good security guys out there that are trying to help everybody save themselves from themselves. But it's going to be a sector to watch and grow, and be alert from. The kind of unfortunate part is it really gets back down into the moms and pops consumers. I know you're an IT guy, so you would get it, but even the simple things of password management, stuff like that, there's a lot of people that don't even get the simplicities of why you don't use the same password everywhere. So trying to help protect friends from themselves when they don't grasp it, it's a head scratcher, but is what it is.
Absolutely. I like to take that whole ROI and vision discussion and kind of uh, use it towards our return to the moon. So I
Okay.
guess first place to talk about is, did you know that NASA is planning to send people back to the moon in 2024?
Yes, I've been watching it and paying attention to it. I think that, well, while NASA's got their plan and their vision, and I look at it as NASA having the grand vision. They got us there, for years. They got the space shuttle. They got, they developed all this cool tech. And I still don't discount NASA, because they've got really good operations. But um, in the back of my mind, I think the innovation aspect of it, the privatization, aspect of it. I mentioned SpaceX a few times. I think that the innovation and the thinking way the heck outside of the box is what's going to allow us to get there. Um, I honestly think that the private sector is going to put people on the moon before NASA will. NASA will very much want to try to say we did it. But when you've got a $10,000 toilet seat, it's like, yeah, okay, it's a ring. The or the what was the because the jokes there for a while it was when the shuttle was flying, was the $10,000 toilet seat and the $15,000 wrench that was not that big. um and and I think that the innovation is going to come out of the private sector. The ROI underneath it, um that if you combine the ROI aspect of it with the trash, we all know that there's tons of space trash out there. And I mean, I love photography. I'm just now, literally after all these years, I'm just now getting into astrophotography. I'm trying to do it on the cheap, but that ain't a cheap thing to get into. Um, but even just standing outside here, and when we moved out here 13 years ago, it was awesome because we could go out here and look up at the sky. And when we moved from inside of the Houston area, from inside the Beltway way out here 13 years ago, when we moved out here, the kids were like, wow, look at the stars. Well, thanks to light pollution, the stars aren't quite as easy to see out here anymore. But just standing out here one night, standing in the driveway, staring up, and I love taking pictures of the moon. So yeah, I think it's going to be really cool to get people back there. But it also makes you realize the amount of stuff up there, because just standing there watching, I'm looking up, and if you haven't done this, I kind of challenge you to. There's some really great apps for the phone out there that you can go get and stick on your phone to, to see what constellations are in the sky and where they are, and sunrise, sunset. You can go see everything. But we were standing outside one night watching for the space station to fly over, so you can see, when the space station's traversing the sky, and yeah, you see this really bright dot just moving super, super fast way across the sky. But as we were standing out there waiting for it, we're standing up here just looking out at the dark sky. And while we were doing that, SpaceX had just launched a new batch of satellites, and literally you could see the trains, of all the Starlink satellites moving across, going through the sky. And I know that the satellites are up there for a reason, and they're going to serve their purpose. But they're up there, and they've got a plan for them. They're going to use them, and then controlled deorbits, controlled burns. Well, I mean, now that you've got, you know, now that you've got the capabilities that you've got combined with technologies that we've seen launch over time, theoretically, you've got the ability, the old shuttles, they had the grappling arms. You go up there, retrieve a satellite, suck it in, work on it, put it back up. You know, we know that they did that with the Hubble. Um, you know, could one of our flying grain silos have that capability? Yeah. I mean,
And
there's,
that's the plan too.
yeah.
And on top of that, even better than the shuttle, imagine being able to pressurize the area that you put
Mhm.
the satellite in. Now you can work with it in regular. You don't have to have a bulky spacesuit.
Right.
You can actually work on it with your hands and be a
Well,
lot
yeah,
better.
I was watching the walks recently when when the astronauts were having to work on the solar panels, the solar arrays, and you know, here they are in these big bulky gloves, and you see the wrenches that they're tethered, and and you're looking at this, and I'm thinking, man, there's stuff that I have a hard time grabbing hold of a stupid nut when I'm working on it with my bare hands in the car, and here's these guys having to having to deal with stuff in these big bulky gloves, and you know, but yeah, you're right, being able to pressurize it, work on it, or you know, to work on it and put it back out there, or to be able to collect it, suck it back in, recycle it. You know, the ROI is going to be into um, you know, being able to reuse and put stuff, you know, back in service, or reuse the components and, you know, rebuild them, restructure them. Um, and I think that's really where the ROI is going to come from. The reuse is huge because I forget what the figure was, but the amount of money that Elon's saving by recovering a booster, and then you know, refurbing it and stuffing it back on the launch pad is huge compared to, you know, basically SLS having a grain silo land in the ocean and that's it. Next, you know, they're not even recovering it. They're not even getting it back out of the ocean to dispose of it. But you know, even if you dispose of it, you know, the whole um, uh, the turbines, you know, the wind turbines and stuff. That's a cool idea, kind of a cool theory, green energy. But if you've seen the videos of what they have to do with those blades to cut them up, because the way that they're made and built, the fiberglass is not recyclable. They've got to cut them up into chunks and then they're burying them in landfills.
Mm.
Well, so what's so much green about, you know, having football fields end on end on end full of nothing but broken blades? Well, that's, it might be providing green energy, but at the time that, you know, you're looking at what it costs to make the turbine, to get it up on the stack, to build the blades and then decommission the blades every so often and then go landfill them. We've got to get to their reusable state, because that's where in the end state I think the ROIs are going to come from. The innovation is also going to be faster, I think, coming out of the private sector. um, you know, the Blue Origin stuff, the stuff that Virgin just launched. What was it, yesterday or day before? The Virgin plane going up. That to me is really cool. Do I have $1 million to go, you know, go for a passenger ride up into space for 5 minutes? No, but you know, it's really cool to see what, you know, the different companies are doing to try and get, you know, either edge of space exploration, to get beyond that, to get to the moon. Um, I think the space, I think getting to the moon and then beyond is going to be really, really cool. But the ROI, I think, is going to come out of reusability, recycling, repair, and reuse. We've gotten very much out of the repair space. When we were little kids, you didn't just go out and buy a new TV. You called the TV repairman and they came and fixed it. You know, granted that was, you know, old tube days, but um, you know, they came and fixed stuff. The market that we've gotten into as instant gratification consumers is throw it away and replace it. And we've got to get away from the throw it away, replace it mindset into the repair and reuse mindset to make ROIs and to get stuff up there. Yeah, they're going to have to recondition it to get it space ready, but you know, we gotta get out of the throw it away mindset, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really mind-boggling to think that you spend 2, 3, 4 years building something just to use it for a few minutes and throw it away.
Hmm.
Uh, what do you think about us going back to the moon? I mean, yeah, I think you mentioned, we need to get the ROI is going to require making a lot more economical reuse. But I guess, I mean, do you think it's a good thing that we're going back to the moon, or misplaced priorities, or how do you feel about
Um, well, there's a couple of things. Number one, I've always thought getting there is just mind-boggling. It's really cool. Um, the I would love to, well, shoot, I would love to be, am I ever going to get to the moon? No. Am I ever going to get to Mars? No. Will somebody else get there? Heck yeah. I mean, I'd be fat, dumb, and happy if I was able to just hop in that second seat of, the Angels or the Thunderbirds on their press runs, but I'd be fat, dumb, and happy with that. But in terms of getting to the moon, no, I don't think it's misused or misguided priorities. Exploration's always going to be out there. There's people who's like, do you realize how much money you could have spent on X relief for this or X relief for that? And it's like, well, okay, yeah, but, and then you say, when you built a rocket, you employed all these people for this program, you employed all these people for the guidance, for the recovery, for the building, for the circuitry, for the, all these components. So is it a complete waste? Not really, because it employed and fed all these families working on, the thing. Um, but in terms of what's the byproduct or what's the end result of the thing, um, is getting to the moon and going for exploration a waste? No, not really. Not in my opinion anyway. I've always been fascinated by space, and I'd love to see us get up there, but I think we need to get to the moon before we get to Mars for sure. Because I mean, I'd rather figure it out close to home than 5 years away. One's a 3-day trip, and the other one is 5-year one way. So it's pick your battles. But if you get to, and I'm gonna, oh, and yes, I do have my little Lego guys, but
it? Oh, excellent.
you you
Yeah.
you get your little guys up here in, oops, let me turn off that. Uh, nope, I can get it up here in front of me. But you get these little guys up here. This is one of the coolest things I think in the world, is imagining these guys up on the moon.
Do
And
you have 4 astronauts there?
yes, there's 4 little astronauts. Oops, get it up here in front of me. Is it going to stay? Let me turn off the background thing. Virtual background, turn off. Okay, so now it's going to stay there. So yeah, there's the 4 little astronauts. There's even a little U.S. flag in there, but this came as part of that big old Lego Saturn V setup. But checking out these guys, seeing them, here, and then getting the mental mindset of, you know, those guys are up there on the moon. Some, the astrophotographers that I follow that have got these gargantuan telescopes, it's like I would love for somebody to be able to pull off a telescope and point it at the moon, because I would love to see pictures from here of, the original landings, see the because the stuff from the landings is still going to be up there. I'd love to see pictures of, that. If we got telescopes that we can see deep into space, hey, show me the moon. Let's see what's cooking over there. But in terms of, is it misguided? I don't think so. Everybody's going to, always want to have kind of an exploratory side to them. I mean, if the Wright brothers hadn't done what they had, done what they were told was never going to work, we wouldn't have the big old things like that. What is it? The Airbus A380, that gargantuan thing in the air. And if you haven't seen one of those in person, you go look at it and you're like, how does that get off the ground? or the Antonov, if you've ever seen that thing out at Intercontinental when it's here, that AN-124, it's huge. And you're looking at this thing going, how on earth does that fly? How? And then if you know the physics behind how planes get their lift, you're like, your mind's even kind of blown again at that thing actually got off the ground. Well, that thing got off the ground because the Wright brothers did. Well, if you apply that to space, it's kind of the same ballpark. I mean, I think we're just beginning to scratch the surface of it. So it'll be cool to see what happens over the next rest of my lifetime.
Oh, what do you see as like the future of humanity? I mean, do you think we're just like really going to be Earth centered for the rest of our existence, making these little side trips to places, or do you think humanity will actually branch out into the rest of the solar system and beyond?
uh, well, in terms of in terms of rest of the solar system, I think we're earthbound for a while. Yeah, there'll be a few people that get to the moon. There'll be a few people that get to the Mars, but for the foreseeable future, uh, I don't know that we'll get a whole lot further than that. There might be ambitions to get further than that, but in reality, you know I think we're probably looking at you know 200 to 300 years of still being earthbound, and unless there's major revelational stuff that pops up. I've always been a fan of the movie Stargate, but and the likelihood of that popping up, and oh, by the way, millions of interconnected gates just magically appearing out there, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. But I the dreaming aspect of it, the what could be's is I think what's going to drive a lot of invention, and what ifs, and futures for things and for people. But yeah, I mean, I wished we could get out there, but just to go see what it's like. I don't know if you've seen it today or not, but there was a picture that was on the NASA site, um, and it was from the Hubble that showed this just gorgeous picture, but every dot in that picture is a galaxy.
Wow.
And so, and when you look at it in that context and you realize that that one's a galaxy and that one's a galaxy and that one's a galaxy, and then if you start putting the distance into that, of how many light years away a galaxy is, um, it's mind-boggling that for your eyes to see that light, you know that that started traveling from there to your eye 20 million, 100 million years ago. It's just it's mind-boggling in terms of distance and space. And when you see that picture and there's all these galaxies, you realize there's lots out there. But in terms of getting there, we're talking major innovations have to happen before that's possible. But there's also not a reason in the world that some of the tech that's being applied out there can't get engineered for utilization here on our dear old planet, to where we have to get outside and mow the yard and weed the flower beds. So
Absolutely. Oh, well, if it was possible, would you go to space?
heck yeah.
Like,
I
are you talking about like a suborbital trip on, say, Virgin Galactic, or
Are you
maybe
buying?
the well,
If
that's
you're
the
buying,
affordable
I'm
part.
in.
That's the affordable part. But are you talking about like to orbit, like the International Space Station for a week, or would you go to the moon, or would you consider immigrating to Mars once Elon has his million person city going?
Uh, well, by the time they get a base established on Mars, I don't think that the age and physical fitness of my era will get there. But I mean, yeah, I mean, if it was possible and somebody else is buying, heck yeah, I'll go. But I don't think it's going to be financially or fiscally possible for most people that we know to be able to do anything like that. Um, it would be nice, but it's, definitely not on the affordable side. And there's no way that, anybody that's 50 plus years old is ever going to qualify physically to, meet the rigors to make it whatever program X to get up there. So it'd be nice, but the only way that I think it'd be viable is if it was I happen to win a contest to get on a freebie ride around the globe, and it would probably end up being suborbital. But heck yeah, I'd love to go to the moon, but the feasibility of it, I think, is about a goose egg. So
Well, I mean, I don't think aging is going to be what it used to be. Medicine's also progressing. A lot of research is being done into rejuvenation type therapies to help people get more years out of their life. I mean, it's very possible you actually might become more fit as that technology advances.
that would be cool, but I think my vice of barbecue, Tex-Mex, and hamburgers is probably going to limit that. But it would be nice.
So Discovery Channel starting a TV show next year called "Who Wants to Be an Astronaut."
Oh, really?
The winner of it gets to go to the International Space Station for 8 days. You see yourself participating in something like that?
No, not likely.
Yeah.
It,
You,
it, it'll
you,
Well, it'll be interesting to see who they pick. Because when much like anything, the competition shows like that, well, what people are calling reality TV, that kind of stuff. Those shows, they're casted on purpose and for a reason, and you'll always have the fit people that you can almost pick off that'll be there or not be there. They'll be picking off personalities, profiles, and you'll always have the underdog people that the directors will hold on to until the very end before they 86 them. But at the end of the day, I mean, it would be kind of funny to watch, but yeah, I don't ever see myself participating in anything like that at all.
well, Greg, I really appreciate your time. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't touch on?
Uh, well, I mean, you've been interviewing people, but I'll turn some questions around on you. What's your kind of vision? Where do you see the well, space race, if you will, today, with all of the countries that are launching landers and getting stuff there? Who do you think is going to be the first ones to get to the moon and to get to Mars?
Yeah.
Like to get a body on there.
The interesting thing is space policy seems to be one thing that the current administration has continued to support from the previous administration, which has been kind of amazing. That's not the norm when it comes to space policy. Pretty much everybody's putting their own stamp on it and going in a completely different direction. So it looks like NASA, the new NASA administrator, Senator Nelson, still wants to try to keep the 2024 moon landing date. Now, the human landing system that was awarded to SpaceX has been challenged and is on hold. And it's unclear on how long that's going to
Well,
take.
yeah, because none of the contractors in his state were awarded any of the work.
Well, but the thing is, Elon is still continuing to develop his capability. He's not sitting around like a Boeing or Lockheed saying, "Hey, when you pay it, I'll build it." He's like,
Yeah.
I want to see space happen. I'd love to have your money, but between Starlink, Tesla, and our commercial crew and all the satellite launching stuff, we got enough money to continue to build out our system. So I think that's great. I think SpaceX is sending a group of people around the moon in 2023.
Yeah, Inspiration.
Well, Inspiration 4 is later this year.
Okay.
4 people into space, but this is called Dear Moon. It's funded by a Japanese billionaire. So that's going to be pretty exciting. But I think Elon will have people on Mars before 2030.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think in fact, Greg, you and I will be able to go on a suborbital trip between on a SpaceX rocket between places on the world, for about $10,000. I think
You think so?
I think so. Yeah, because they're talking about using it for point-to-point Earth transportation, and they say they can be profitable at equivalent first class airline tickets. So from here to New Zealand, I think it's like what 10,000, 15,000 for first class. So
that would be interesting.
It would be game changing.
I was always kind of sad when the Concorde reached the end of its life. I think that would have been cool I saw that thing coming in out of DFW a couple of times, and that was just, it was like watching something from the future come in and take off. But I was kind of sad when the Concorde got, reached the end of its tenure. But yeah,
Well,
that'd be cool.
There's some companies working on supersonic transportation, but I think SpaceX with their Starship, I mean, Elon's talking about being able to use the same Starship 3 times a day. I mean, you go and spend $100 million for a 747, you're only going to make max 1 flight per day, right?
Mm-hmm.
By the time you got from, I mean, a 12-hour flight, and get a refurbish and all the time on both ends. I mean, but SpaceX is thinking with their Starship, they'll be do the equivalent flight, but do 3 of them per day. The payback for them, they feel like it's going to be much better. And down there in Brownsville, they're talking about having a factory that'll be able to produce 2 of these things a week. So,
that would be
after,
insane.
I know. So you have 100 of them at the end of a year, each doing 3 flights a day. That's like 300 flights to orbit, to the, point to point on Earth, to the moon. Every 2 years, having thousands of these things take off to Mars. It's just, I honestly think the 2020s are going to be beyond our imagination in terms of what we're going to see happen.
That'd be cool.
Yeah,
that would be very cool.
I think the 2020s is what everybody thought in the 1960s, the 1970s was going to be.
I forgot what I was watching the other day. It was some old space sci-fi thing, and I was watching this rocket come up, and the rocket was landing, and the old graphics that they had, and it was supposed to be the flames coming out of the rocket engine, but old video. But what they did back then is they simply reversed the film, and so you had the flames and the plume coming out, because the plume was basically being sucked back up into the engine. And I was looking at that and cracking it up. But I'm looking at this thinking, even the space thinkers, even back during the cheesy film days, they were even thinking you could land a rocket on its rear end and reuse it.
Yeah.
So getting to see that happen now is really cool.
And it happens so routinely. The only time it makes news is when it doesn't happen correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of the headlines, and I forgot which outlet it was, but one of the headlines when they covered SN15, it says like SpaceX landed their rocket and it didn't blow up this time. And I was just like, okay, that's a bad way to word that, but okay, I'll let you go with it.
SpaceX has launched something every 9 days on average this year.
I did not know that.
Isn't that pretty astounding? Yeah, it's been that often between their Starlink launches, the crew launches, the regular satellite launches, the Starship launches, every 9 days.
Wow. So have you messed around with Starlink yet?
I haven't. I'm on I've ordered it. I'm waiting for them to provide service in my area. But have you?
No, I've seen one, but no, I hadn't messed with it at all. I'd love to when it's available here. I think it'd be really interesting to see, and I think it's going to put a serious bite on. I think it'll do two things. I'm hopeful that it will be able to deliver, even here, in Houston, like even surrounding areas. I'm hopeful that it'll be able to deliver the giga speeds that the people that are getting it already are beginning to see. You'll get connectivity to places where it hasn't been before. I've got a friend that lives out, he lives probably 30 minutes out from here, except you can't get high speed in their house. You're literally still operating off of a Wi-Fi hotspot
Hmm.
at their house. That is high speed for them. They don't even have DSL out to their neck of the woods, even though there is a gigabit fiber drop 400 feet away, but it's at a box. It's a pop location, but it's a building that is there for local emergency services, command.
Hmm.
It's not available for the residences, so he can see the building that it comes to, but he can't get it at his house. So they're still dealing with hotspots. So, you'll have uh, near, people that are near large communities. Like, he's an hour and 15 minutes outside of downtown Houston, but they don't have high speed. You've got places that are much more remote than that, that don't have high speed. So yeah, I think there's a huge market. There's a huge market way outside of the U.S. and in lots of disconnected remote areas. But there's also a huge market in places that the mass comm companies that we all know haven't bothered to touch yet. So I think he's got a financial plan and strategy for that I think is going to feed a ton into SpaceX. So I think that'll be cool. But I'm hopeful that once it starts rolling out, because if he's servicing a place that's 30 minutes from here, he's going to be servicing here. So
Hmm.
I think at the end of the day, it could also help put the pressure on the big telcos that we've been, telcos or carriers that we've been dealing with for years, to provide better service or higher speeds or better capacity for these communications infrastructures here. He's just going about it in a completely different way that doesn't rely on, landlines, phone lines, copper, fiber, or power. So I
And
think it'll be really cool.
and how cool will it be whenever you could take one of these things, put on top of an RV, and literally you could travel the country and still maintain your day job.
hmm That would be cool. One of the guys that and I don't know. I mean, I've just seen his posts on Twitter, so I don't know how much there is to it. But apparently, it's the initial basis of it is somewhat geo-locked, because he bought it for that purpose, was to
Yeah.
to haul around with his motorhome, and well, his overglorified van, and go out and do his remote work, and do his astro work and do stuff that he's doing. But he bought it for that purpose, and then discovered real fast that it, and I don't know if it has to do with the current capabilities of the set or what, but it appears to be somewhat geo based. So going outside of that area, he doesn't just have the ability of powering it back up and running with it. I'm sure that'll be, like with all the cool Teslas and everything, it'll be a future software update. But it's got the capabilities that there's many other carriers that can't even come close to touching what that has the potential of unlocking. So yeah, that'll be really cool.
Absolutely. Well, Greg, I really appreciate your time, and it was so great to get to catch up with you.
Absolutely,
And
sir.
thank you so much for participating in my project. And we'll need to meet up sometime and have a cup of coffee or something.
Absolutely. We've got I'll ping you when we do a gathering, but we're going to be doing a gathering pretty soon, out at, I think we're going to target Corkscrew over in Spring pretty soon. So I'll ping you when that's coming up, because it's going to be, even though the offices aren't open yet, thanks to the wonderful CV-19 floating around the world. We still get together and grab some burgers or grab some barbecue, and just it's good to see faces and chat and catch up with people.
That would be fantastic. I'd love to come.
Well, thank you, sir. Thanks for having me, and good luck with your project. I definitely think you need to ping Mr. Hepner and catch up with him on his astrophotography stuff. He's shot some amazing stuff over the years. He pretty much just does wide field now, but he had some huge rigs that cost the price of a small car. That he did some awesome deep space work just out of his backyard here in Cyprus. So it'd definitely be worthwhile for you to catch up with him, especially before he moves off to the Great White North, and you'd enjoy it. So,
Well,
but good
thank you. I'll
talking with you,
definitely reach
sir.
out to him.
And
Okay.
congratulations to yours who just graduated, and tell them best luck with their future endeavors, man.
Well, thank you so much, Greg, and talk to you soon.
All righty, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.